expansions experimented with a variety of claw specializations, with Therizinosaurus dumping the most evolutionary trait of
No, we gotta play that back. We gotta play that back. Y'all saw that?
claw specializations, with Therizinosaurus dumping the most evolution points into the trait of any build in history. These giant curved...
Alright, so what's good with y'all boys? Baby Entertainment, welcome back to another reaction. This is by none other than TierZoo, our Claws OP. So we're about to get this answer to that question right now. So without further ado, let's get into it. Woo! Game over.
Snake, are you okay?
When speccing your character, it's important to choose equipment that integrates well with your chosen build's combat style and minimizes its inherent vulnerabilities. Weapons like horns and fangs are capable of inflicting massive damage.
Yo, I forgot how strong rhinos are. I really forgot. These rhinos may be mad strong.
But using them in battle can leave a player vulnerable to counterattacks, and their value is mostly limited to 1v1 situations. Balancing the risk and damage potential of launching an attack is a key strategic consideration when equipping any type of weapon. So today we'll discuss one that comes as a standard feature on many of the most viable builds in the game: Claws. Claws are versatile, close-range weapons that can be used for offense or defense without sacrificing much in terms of mobility. They do require the user to get somewhat close to an enemy to launch an attack, but due to the low end lag on most standard slashing and swiping claw strikes, these tend to be one of the safest attack options a player has access to. Unlike some other weapons, claws can usually be regenerated if damaged, allowing them to be used freely with minimal risk.
Wait, whoa. Did that crab just rip his own arm off?
Can usually be regenerated if damaged, allowing them to be used freely with minimal risk. Claws can be used against multiple enemies at once if the build has decent mobility, making them an excellent choice for generalists and tanks alike. They can also be specialized into a variety of secondary perks that allow the user to climb, dig, or run at extreme speeds without slipping. Claws can be optimized for piercing, slashing, or crushing damage depending on which basic type you spec into. While some members of the Arthropod faction have tiny hooked claws that are used for the mobility perks alone, others equip pincher-type claws, called Chelae, that can inflict massive crushing damage. The size of Chelae relative to the user's body varies between build classes, but they can be used in combat even on the smaller end due to the additional perk of being able to immobilize opponents. Crustacean builds like crabs and lobsters can use claws to crush or dismember prey. Devastating at crabs and lobsters can use claws to crush or dismember prey, a devastating attack if it connects, though it can be fairly easily dodged by more mobile players. Scorpions can use their claws to inflict knockback, or as a physical barrier to keep an enemy away from their vitals, but they also enable them to use an extremely powerful grappling combination move. While an enemy is immobilized in their claws, scorpions use their flexible stingers to inflict massive piercing and venom damage. This attack is more effective than crushing alone, but the trade-off between physical power and venom potency means that some scorpions are still weak against builds that can deflect or withstand their stings. Instead of modifying entire limbs into crushing pinchers, many tetrapod builds can equip individual claws to each digit and then use them to inflict piercing or slashing damage. Reptile and mammal builds that spec into claws usually equip them to all 4 limbs, using them for combat as well as their broad array of secondary functions. Tetrapod builds in earlier expansions experimented with a variety of claw specializations, with Therizinosaurus dumping the most evolutionary trait of
No, we gotta play that back. We gotta play that back. Y'all saw that?
Claw specializations, with Therizinosaurus dumping the most evolution points into the trait of any build in history. These giant curved claws were primarily used to hook and pull vegetation in order to access the best loot, but they served the secondary function of being used to attack or intimidate predators in a similar strategy to that of anteaters in the current meta. Megatherium is another example of a build that went all in on claws. but theirs were specialized to withstand the impacts of intense digging, and thus were much more powerful in combat as a result.
Yo, these animals
Although
strong.
Megatherium were large enough to repel most enemies using intimidation
Oh,
alone,
Lord, he's coming.
succeeding in a meta where Smilodon were the apex predators meant that their
Smilodon?
claws needed to be ready for serious action when necessary.
Oh, these
While
basically just
Thanasaurus and
giant
Megatherium are no
sloths.
longer playable builds, the basic tetrapod claw specializations that they pioneered are still influential in today's meta. While some mammal variants spec into nails or hooves instead, claws are still an extremely common limb equipment choice and are used for everything from climbing and foraging to attacking enemies. Digging is a common specialization for mammal players, with builds like the armadillo and anteater leveraging their claws to access hard-to-reach resources. At the extreme end of this ability, moles use their long, thick claws and sensory modifications to complete their entire playthroughs in
Naked
subterranean
mole rat.
maps.
I swear to God, naked mole rats are by far the most ugliest animals to ever exist on this planet. And that's on God.
Where they can farm out invertebrate players for XP. Other mammal builds spec into lighter claws to preserve dexterity and use them more in a generalist fashion, but this means they can only inflict minor scratch damage in combat situations. The cloven hooves of even-toed ungulate builds like pigs and deer technically are claws as well, which add cutting edges to already powerful limbs and increase the damage inflicted by kicks.
Nah, these scrappy.
Mammals in the Carnivora faction all have claws,
Make
but
it-
only
make it-
some
make it-
are fully
Ooh!
dependent
Ooh!
on them to take down enemies. Felids have extremely sharp claws that retract when not in use, conserving their durability and allowing them to move silently when preparing to ambush an opponent. These claws provide additional traction and therefore movement speed when extended, but more importantly, they greatly increase both the damage and grappling capability of
Gotcha,
these Felids. This grappling can be used in a deadly combination, where claws immobilize an opponent so the user can safely inflict lethal bite damage.
Nah, for real though. Wait, is that a cheetah? If that is a cheetah, I really feel. Nah, cheetahs don't have claws. But if that is, I really feel bad for cheetahs because they've been nerfed so bad. They've really been nerfed.
They're also remarkably effective for climbing, which opens up access to areas of the map that other carnivore builds can't reach. With some of the best speed and power stats in the game, Felids are absolute killing machines that use claws to decimate bird and mammal player bases. For builds which lack the ability to retract their claws, the repeated contact with the ground causes them to become dull and less useful for climbing or combat, but they do still provide solid mobility bonuses. Since bird forelimbs are modified into wings, most avian builds can only equip functional claws to their feet. Hoatzins have the unique ability to equip claws to their forelimbs that are used for climbing, but this ability is shed at higher levels in favor of flight, and all other birds are restricted to hind limb claws only. While this may seem like a limitation, members of the Raptor faction use their claws and wings in conjunction to carry out some of the deadliest ambush attacks in the game. Their absolutely busted sensory abilities and mobility stats allow them to attack before an opponent can even detect their presence, impaling them with sharp talons before they have time to react and counterattack. However, Raptor legs are relatively short and their wings can't deal much damage in their own right, which limits their ability to counterattack when an enemy launches an attack on the ground or from behind. In a major departure from the typical avian playstyle, some birds dump evolution points into their legs and feet at the expense of their flight ability. This strategy hinges on having a high enough run speed to evade most enemies, and enough power in their legs to disembowel enemies with dagger-like claws when challenged.
Oh my God.
Both types of avian builds can be viable against certain opponents, but their inability to inflict much damage with their wings leaves them vulnerable to rushdown and more powerful builds, and underscores the benefits of having claws equipped to all
Yo, these animals just straight up scrapping. Like, they're just on sight. My goodness, these animals are so ruthless.
four limbs. Claws are an excellent weapon choice for players with the flexibility and limb lengths needed to maximize their threat range. But even on less mobile builds, they're still well worth the investment. These versatile weapons are at their best when they're used either as a safe, non-committal attack to chip away at an opponent, or as part of a grappling combination move that anchors an opponent in place, while additional damage is inflicted by either teeth or stingers. As the top-tier claw users, Felids are definitely OP,
Oh, yeah,
as they have
most
pretty much the
definitely.
perfect setup to maximize the utility of their highly specialized claws. So
With their speed, agility, and strength, all that combined, one deadly,
don't expect to immediately skyrocket up the tier list the moment you spec into the Claws trait, as the Felid class may be a bit of an outlier. However, claws are still a valuable addition to almost any build that can equip them, and cost very little in terms of evolution points
Ain't no
considering
way
how many new
string
options
up
and
that
strategies they can add to a character. On the subject of claws, you may have noticed that I didn't discuss one of the game's most famous claws in this video. On that note, I have a bit of an announcement. I've been secretly working on something big, my own 3D animation studio. I want to make one of the best educational wildlife shows ever, and finally answer the types of questions that I constantly get asked. Who would win in a fight between... well, I mean, take your pick. So far, I've been limited in what I've been able to show on this channel, since many animals never meet, and are separated by either distance or time. Through the magic of 3D animation, I want to bring these confrontations to life for all of you to witness. The first episode will pit one of history's most lethal claws against one of prehistory's most deadly...
No, that cat gonna lose. Ooh, I'm not sure. It could be a real good fight. I'm not sure who's gonna win. I know that joint could be deadly though.
fangs. I've been working super hard, and although the first episode isn't quite ready, it'll be premiering on Nebula soon, and I don't want you to miss it. Many of you know by now that Tearsu has been a long-time part...
Nebula. I forgot all about that. That's a whole sponsor. My man's be hitting us with W ads, bro.
...show that I'm launching. So I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.
No problem, Tearsu. Can't wait to see more videos from you. But that was a great reaction, guys, as per usual. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If y'all did, make sure you punch the like button in the face like a boss. And peace out.